am Elizabeth Stephenson with New Direction Family Law, and I am so excited to have Jessica Garcia with me today. She's with Brainstorming Women, and I'm an attorney. I don't know a lot about finances, and that's why I have Jessica. And she's here today to help explain some of the financial issues that you may be going through doing separation and divorce. So, Jessica, can you give us a little bit about your background?
Certainly. I am a certified divorce financial analyst. I have 20 plus years experience in financial services, helping folks with their credit, with their finances. And so my mission with this is to help women that are experiencing this life transition of divorce. And so what I do is take your financial information and gather that to help you make a good decision and fully assess settlement options.
That's great. Now, I have a lot of women who come to me and I ask them, well, now tell me about your assets and your debts. And a lot of times they say, I don't know. And so what would be the most important thing that I would tell a potential client of what they need to find out about?
Well, I'd say the first item I think about would be to be prepared. Gather information, gather documentation, get financial information. Get pay stubs, the last pay stub. Get information on your mortgage and the closing documents on the mortgage. Yeah, that's very important. Get information, gather information on the retirement accounts that might exist, on any debts that you have. Just do your best to gather as much information as possible. That would be a key step for me.
And how far do our local rules require that they go back, at least a year or two prior to the date of separation. Is that good enough?
I'd say from a tax return perspective, you want to go back 3 years.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. And if you do separate returns, you want both parties' returns.
And that's a very good question, because if you have a business, you also want the business returns. Yes, absolutely. So just as much as you can.
And then when you talk about the house and the mortgages and the 401ks and all of that, and I split it, we sort of start with the premise that we're going to divide the property in half. And a lot of people don't understand that if your husband earned a 401k, you're still entitled to your marital portion of that.
Yes,
right? That's
an excellent comment that you're making, because especially with longer term marriages and what we're seeing a lot more now of what are called gray divorces, their pensions and 401ks are sometimes the biggest asset that a couple will have. And so we do absolutely want to assess that, take a look at what the value is. Now with a 401k, it's black and white. The value today you can get with a statement. Where the deeper analysis is required is when there's a pension.
Right.
And it's a 25-year-old pension, but you've been married to him for 20 years. So we can calculate what percentage of that you're entitled to. Right. There's a lot of work that can be done to ensure that you are protected, because you look at child support and you look at temporary support and then alimony, those will end.
Right.
And so my role is to help you look at your years beyond that to ensure that you're protected.
Okay. And so if I have a client who comes to you and says, and here's all our financial information, then what do you do with that information?
So what I do is first, it's the, let's call it the marital asset pool.
Okay.
Right? So I take all of that.
And what does that include? Does it include everything you earned during the marriage?
Yes, but it's good to just have it all. The documents that I mentioned that we need will help us assess that.
Okay.
But what we'll want to do is take a look at his column and her column. Right?
Okay.
And the easy thing is to do is let's split it in half.
Right.
Right. But that's not what that's not always equitable. Does not mean equal. It means fair. So we want to be fair to both parties. Right. I mean, that's ultimately what we want to do. And so so we gather that information. We look at what the assets are. We look at what expenditures you have. Yes. Right, that's important too, right? So where are we? So a budget is key.
So do you help them with the budget?
Absolutely, and I would say that's a very important first step.
Okay.
And because it helps us get to the financial affidavit.
Okay. Right.
And so so that's all the work that we do. It's very personalized, very tailored. So I can just give you general information, but that's what I would say that we would want to do: gather that, and it might mean that we've got to go through 2 years of CVS pharmacy receipts, for example. I mean, but that's what we'll do if that's what we need to.
Because we don't want to guess. It's called a financial affidavit, and so when you have a litigation pending in Wake County or most other counties, they're going to ask you to fill out a financial affidavit, and that has your income and all of your monthly expenses on it. I mean, down to getting your nails done and your hair done and your dry cleaning that you may not think of. And so you can help. We don't want to guess at that, right?
That's right.
Because we come up with a number, we want to make sure that it's what you actually need to maintain your household for the month.
And it's actually a dynamic document. And what I mean by that is as things change, you want to update it. So you want to be as accurate as you can, and because the judge will see this information, and that it'll help you ultimately.
Right. It also helps with settlement, because if I go in and say, oh, I need $3,000 a month in alimony, the other party's going to want some documentation of how I came to that number, and so it can help a lot in settlement if we've got really true, accurate numbers. Don't you agree?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. We got some questions. I'm going to from listeners and from our website and that sort of thing. So I'm going to share some of those with you.
Okay.
Here's what everybody thinks. Oh, when I separate, I get to maintain my same style of living.
Oh,
hard to do. You can't maintain two households on one income.
That's right.
So what would you, and so our biggest asset, let's say, is the house. And so would your recommendation be, if it can't maintain it on one, how about selling it or keeping it? What would be considerations you would think about?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that most people automatically want to keep the house.
Right.
And that's emotional. We want to move away from emotional decisions, and that's how I can help you. We want to take a look at exactly. So you want to make sure what it costs you to maintain that property. Maybe you're wanting to keep it because you want to keep the children there. Children are resilient,
Right.
so we'll move on from that. We'll want to ensure that, what options do you have? You can keep it. That means you might have to refinance because your spouse might want to go buy another house.
Right.
And that will hurt him in that process. You could sell it. That's probably the easiest option. And then, of course, you've got tax implications possibly. We can talk about that. And you can stay in the home for a while, for a certain period, and then have your husband help contribute, your ex-husband help contribute. But the problem there is you've got to make sure that you've got protection in place to, what if somebody doesn't pay the mortgage? Or what if there's a repair needed? So there are various factors to be considered, and it's easy to say, I'll keep the house, but it's not always the best answer.
That's right. It's not always the best choice, even though it may be what you want. And you help them sort of walk through those emotional issues of, this is where my children grow up, this is where I want to be, and sort of talk about...
Understandable.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'd also like to add that is why when you gather the financial documentation, the closing documents on the purchase of the home are very important, because part of the analysis will be, what is your cost? Your cost basis. So what did it cost you? What did you spend on improving the home? And then what will it cost you to sell it?
Right.
And that will help us from a tax perspective determine what capital gains there might be, if any.
Okay, great answer.
Thanks.
What debts do you think should be included on what we're calling the financial affidavit? We're not only talking about what your assets are, but we got to figure out what those debts are out there, right?
Yeah, so there are four main debts. Of course, the mortgage is the one that we've talked about. When you are looking at the mortgage, though, keep in mind that there might be a second lien.
Oh,
So there's a HELOC and a HELOAN, so we want to get that information too. And then, of course, the payment on the mortgage, you want to consider the four components, which is PITI, right? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So you want all that.
Right.
Yes, and then, so that's the first debt.
Okay.
And then you've got vehicles.
Right.
So you want that debt, if you have any. I'd say the third would be any loans, both secured and unsecured.
And tell me that people get confused about secured and unsecured.
So a secured loan might be someone that has loaned you money and has taken, let's say, a car.
Okay.
That's a secured loan because the bank has loaned you money, but if you don't pay it back, they take your car.
Got it.
So it's
Okay,
secured.
okay, right.
Yeah, that's secured. Unsecured might be like overdraft protection on your checking account that you've got, a line of credit. Or it might be that a parent has loaned you some money and you have to pay it back.
Is it credit card debt per se?
That's the fourth one.
Okay.
But that is unsecured.
Okay.
But that is also a debt. So
Okay.
so the mortgage, cars, loans, and credit cards.
Okay, so those are the most important things we need to be looking
Yes.
for. All right.
They're not necessarily only, but those are the main ones.
One question we got is, if you have lots of unsecured debt, which we just talked about, should you use the profits from the sale of the house to pay those off? I know without any other information, it's hard to say.
It really is. I mean, my first inclination is if you've got unsecured debt, yes. However, all debt is not bad debt.
Right.
Okay, so that is very personal. We have to look at the budget. We've got to see what other things might need to be paid off, if any, and we also want to see if you want to buy another home. It's again very personalized. So it may be that yes, you want to reduce your debt.
Right.
But then you have to look at what the interest rate is. If you're paying 3%, perhaps you can keep that debt. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you're paying 20%, that's a different
story.
Yeah.
I do it a lot of times. I do say that a lot of times because instead of paying to the debt service, I'd rather the supporting spouse be able to have some additional income freed up to be able to pay alimony or what he's supposed to be paying in child support. So those are also some considerations.
Absolutely, yes.
Let's see. We talked about the financial documents you have to have. Great question. Why do I have to provide all of these documents?
Yeah.
Yeah, why is that? Because I said so. That's
yeah,
why.
exactly. So I think the importance here is that you want to make the best decision for you and your family.
Right.
And so it's like when you go to a doctor, right? Your doctor can't prescribe anything till they have all your information. And so think of that, think of your finances that way. You want to have as much information, as thorough information, and as recent information as possible so that a very good decision can be made ultimately.
Okay, that's great. And let's say that there are some, you just can't, I mean, a lot of times, I'll have someone who has a 401k, they've been married for 10 years, but he earned a portion of that prior to the marriage. So we got to go back and find that statement, right, about what that was worth.
So there's some really neat formulas, and
I like
math, so that we can figure out, so that you know the 401k is 25 years old, but you were married 18 years. What percentage of that? So we can do it that way.
So if we can't get it, there's a way to figure out what that would be worth. Okay, that's great. Do I have to? We may have talked about this. Do I have to reinvest money received from the sale of the house into another house? And if I do or don't, what are the tax consequences?
So you can write off if you've lived in the home for up to 2 years, up to $250,000 per person, per spouse.
All right.
So that's just a secret, I'm telling you.
The lowdown.
Yeah, exactly. Anything above that, you're going to pay taxes on. So we would want to take a look at that, and going back again to the importance of getting the mortgage documents, that will help us figure out what the reality is, because we'll also want to figure out what the value of that home is and what it can sell for. So yeah, we'll need that.
And that's another question. I don't know if you can answer this or not, but a lot of people go and get an appraisal on a house, and that's what they say. If you keep the house and there's $100,000 of equity in it, according to the appraisal, okay. But let's say there's some repairs that need to be made, or I'm going to sell it and I've got a real estate commission. Don't I get to take that off of that number?
Well, it is part of your cost basis. Okay. So we absolutely would calculate the cost to sell the property as part of that.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the three components. What did it cost me to get the home? What mortgage do I have? What improvements have I made? And what is it costing me to sell it?
And that's what we then find is the true value of the house.
Yes, and so with an appraisal, it's good to have that idea, right? So you can use that in your figures. But ultimately, having sold real estate many years ago, it's ultimately what a buyer is willing to pay.
That's true. That's what the equity is. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. What's the difference between, I love this question, the difference between vested and unvested stocks?
Oh, I like these questions. Okay.
My head hurt.
Well, publicly traded companies have shares that they can give to employees as part of a compensation package, right? And so let's say one of the spouses received these. What that means is the vested versus unvested is that there are conditions when these shares are given. And sometimes those conditions might include, and usually they're time related. So let's say over 5 years, your shares will vest, which means that it'll vest 20% a year. Okay. Or it might mean that you've got to meet certain revenue thresholds if you're an executive. Right. It can vary. But the conditions, until those conditions are met, you're unvested.
They're not really property at that point, right? Because they're worth nothing because you didn't invest them.
However, if you look at, for example, vested versus unvested in a retirement account where the company has made a match, has been matching, but you're not fully vested, then you've got to do that calculation for that 401k, for example, to determine, well, he's only 60% vested, so we only can get that out.
Gotcha.
Into the formula that we need to use. Okay. Does that help?
It does.
Okay.
And I will tell you, a lot of people ask me this. It's like, well, they're unvested. So and they're not going to vest until a year after we're separated.
Oh, I see.
So is that marital property?
He can be fired or quit.
Right.
So I would say no.
No, that's what I would say. And that's hard for people sometimes to understand, but it is true.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times somebody will get a bonus the year after they separate, but they got it based on the work they did during the marriage. So I would qualify that. That's a different sort of thing. So that is marital property. Let's see. What do I need a certified financial divorce analyst for? Analyst for?
Well, I would say that there are many reasons, but most importantly, I think they can help you understand your financial situation. They can help you put a budget together. They can help you save time, because when you have this analysis already done and you're meeting with your attorney, that will save you so much time, because you can go in very efficiently and say, this is what I need and why. I will help you put together the notes that go with that information,
Right.
because you'll talk about it now, and then this is doesn't go to court for 6 months. And so that's an important piece of it too, that a CDFA can sit down with you, do the analysis, put together the notes, and put together everything that you need to be prepared. But also, as a CDFA, I can help you with the visual presentation. And what I mean by that is, numbers on a page. Not everybody can work well with that, right? But I can use graphs and charts to help you understand. So let's say that you're spending $2,500 a month in clothing, right? That can happen.
Right.
You look and see what budget, what part of your budget that's taking up, and is that realistic, and what's the judge going to say about that?
Right.
So I like that, because it can help you truly take a look at what's happening.
And a lot of times, you can put numbers on your financial affidavit, and like you say, I actually spend $2,500 a month on clothing. Well, my judge is going to say that's not reasonable, and so he's just going to mark it out or mark it down. So I think you can help clients get a more realistic perspective of what our lifestyle is today, and things have changed, and that's hard to understand.
Well, it is, because remember, you're taking one pot of money and splitting it.
Right.
So you have to be realistic.
I agree with that. So how do people, if they're not my client, but they're listening and they want to get hold of you and find out more about what they can do, how do they reach you?
Well, there are many ways to reach me. I have a website, brainstormingwomen.com. You can also email me, jessica@brainstormingwomen.com, and follow up with any questions you might have. I also have a checklist I can share with you if that helps.
Which is really great. I've used that with a lot of clients, and it does help very much.
Yeah.
So do you have any questions for me on the legal side that maybe people ask you?
Yes, absolutely. There were a few questions, actually, that were related to child support after college, I believe.
Oh, okay, yeah. In North Carolina, you're technically not a minor when you turn 18. When you turn 18, you're an adult, you're emancipated. Unless, for child support purposes, you're still in high school and you're working toward getting your degree, and that can last up to till you're 20 years old. So you may be paying for college, that's great, but the court can't order someone, because they don't have jurisdiction over that child anymore who's now 18, to pay for college. But parents can always agree in a separation agreement or even a court order to pay for those expenses in that way.
So even though it wasn't agreed upon initially, they can amend that to
if they
later?
If they consent to it. The judge can't order it, but if the parties can come to an agreement about that, they can agree to anything they want to. It doesn't matter necessarily what a judge would do.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Let's see. How often are attorney fees awarded, and does the plaintiff or defendant have to be present at the case?
Well, if you've been noticed and received notice, and you don't show up, then your case is still going to go forward, and the judge is only going to hear the other side. So if you haven't been served or given proper notice, you might ask for a continuance. As far as attorney's fees go, it just depends. A lot of times, if the other party hasn't been paying adequate child support, then that's a reason to get attorney's fees. But you may have $10,000 in attorney's fees, and the judge says, great, go pay that at $20 a month. It's generally not a lump sum amount, so you can certainly ask for attorney's fees, but you're not guaranteed to get them.
Okay, excellent. How do I initiate the process for temporary support?
There's temporary support. There's two types. There's child support, and temporary alimony is called post-separation support. And to start the process for litigation, for anything, you have to file a complaint asking the court to award you. You can ask for custody, child support, post-separation support, alimony, property division, an interim distribution, and then that's filed. It's then served on the other party, which means the sheriff just comes to your door and says, here, or you get it through FedEx or certified mail. And then you start the process of getting some court dates in place and having to do all that discovery that we talked about.
Okay.
It doesn't happen quickly. If you file today, it might be December, January, February before you get in front of the judge. So that's why we always encourage settlement. If you can, because one, it'll reduce your attorney's fees. Two, it reduces animosity and helps you co-parent better. And three, you're in control, because once you walk in a courtroom, you've lost all control. The only person that has control is the person in the robe sitting on the bench.
Okay, very good. Can you renegotiate a legal separation document without restarting the clock?
Yeah, because the separation agreement has nothing to do with your divorce. It's two separate issues. Divorce gets you divorced and lets you remarry. The separation agreement is a contract that you and the other party have to come to agreements on the terms. It's like buying a car. Both have to agree on the terms.
Okay.
And if you both agree to renegotiate and change those terms, you can do that. But both parties have to agree to do that. So it doesn't have anything to do with the year and a day getting your divorce.
Okay.
All right.
And then how soon after the 12 months North Carolina required separation, once we file for divorce, are we actually divorced?
Well, remember, it's a year and a day.
A year and a day, okay.
Messed a lot of
Very
people
good.
up, I'm telling you. It takes up, once you file your complaint for divorce saying, we were married, we're separated, and I want a divorce, and literally that's all it's about. It takes about 45 days to wind through the court system. And then either your attorney goes to court or you go to court, and the judge looks at your pleadings, asks you some questions, and signs your divorce decree. That's the easiest part of getting divorced, is getting divorced.
Just
The
getting
hardest
there.
part is getting separated and dividing your property and custody and kids and those sorts of things.
Oh, of course, of course. Let's see. The separation agreement states that I get the house, mortgage, etc. How do we actually make it happen? Who files a quitclaim deed to remove my spouse from the title?
The separation agreement states and sets out who's supposed to do what. So if the husband's supposed to be paying the mortgage and does not, then you have a claim to file for breach of contract. And the judge says, do what the contract says and pay her attorney's fees. Okay? But you can't guarantee. Again, it could take you 3 months to get to court, so somebody's got to pay that mortgage in between. So, but you can get it back, and the court can order the money back.
Okay.
As far as who files the quitclaim deed, you can take care of that in the process of the separation agreement. The more specific you are, like who's going to draw up the quitclaim, how's it going to be filed, when's it going to be signed, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure that all those little details are taken care of.
Okay, very good. And then we finally have one here. What are important first steps if I am contemplating a divorce?
I think the most important step is what we talked about at the beginning. Start gathering those documents. And you can go to our website at newdirectionfamilylaw.com, and we've got a brochure there that's what to do before you separate. And you want to get copies of those important pay stubs, tax documents, 401ks, birth certificates, passports, those sorts of things. And we want a snapshot of what your assets and your debts are on around about that time, because a lot of times things go missing or we can't find statements. So,
assets.
Assets. So if I have what it was, then I can see what it is, and then I can go trace it out and find it. So that's really important.
Very good. Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome, Jessica. Thanks for joining us today. And we will repost this on our Facebook page. Jessica's going to share it. And if you have any other questions, email Jessica. You're welcome to email me at elizabeth@newdirectionfamilylaw.com. And we're happy to help and answer any questions. And thanks for joining us today.
Have a great day.
Sorry. Woo!
How did we do? Gotta make sure that it ended first.
Was it ended?
Still says live.